All right, we are live. Finally, a little bit of technical difficulties here. Um, 2 weeks in a row we had power outages and we weren't able to broadcast because everything here is done through satellite. And of course, without power, there's no internet, there's no satellite, there's no computer, there's no nothing. And this week we got wind, but we're here. I got on, so let's go ahead and begin. Hello, I'm Howard Mann, creator of Conscious Shifting, and welcome to Conscious Shifting. Before we get started, a quick warning and disclaimer. All known side effects of conscious shifting will improve your physical, mental, and spiritual health while providing the ideal environment for spiritual awakening, helping you to live the life of your dreams and influence the world in a positive way. So, if that sounds like something interesting to you, then you can follow us on Facebook or subscribe on YouTube and then join us here Wednesday nights, 6 p.m. California time for Conscious Shifting. If you have a question during a live, during the replay of a live, or during the week, just find a comment box on any of our thought provoking posts or on the live, even if it's a replay. Put your question in there and we'll answer it from a spiritual perspective. So I see some people showing up. Good. Notifications are going out. Love, laugh, and be happy. Hi, Cheryl. Hi, Kathy. Kim, of course. Hi, Susan. Yeah, rough few weeks. Our town just about got destroyed. No power 2 weeks in a row when we were supposed to be broadcasting. And I don't really have a question of the week, but what I do have, there was somebody that they commented on one of the posts, not so much as a question, but I wanted to address it because sometimes I see this. People see the post and something about it triggers them. This particular post was that the only disability in life is a bad attitude. So, there was a thread. You can go and look at it if you want, but the gist of it was that they thought that that was ridiculous. That in fact, he told me, well, tell that to the physically disabled. That's just dumb. The thing is, without knowing, what we're doing here at Conscious Shifting, without following the page, without joining any of the lives, without asking any questions, then you don't really understand the context that all of this is put in. The posts on the page are intended to be thought provoking. That's the whole point of them. And I encourage everyone to submit questions when a post doesn't seem clear, because that's how we learn. If you follow this page, keep an open mind and ask questions, then I promise, and this is what I told them, I promise that what you'll find will be life altering. Spiritual truths may seem dumb at first, but the results are referred to as either unexplainable or miraculous. And the thing is that until understood, everything seems unexplainable. Fact of the matter is, I have physical disabilities, and for the most part, I've overcome them. And the majority of that was with attitude. Without it, I wouldn't have been able to heal beyond what the medical professionals said was even possible. So, you feel free to ask questions and I'll answer them. And in that process, you'll discover things that will improve your physical, mental, and spiritual health. I promise. Okay, so having said that, hi Tammy, how you doing? See a few more people showing up here. So let's get ready for this. Let's get rid of the tension. Everybody take a nice deep breath all the way down to that lower energy center, just about the belly button, and relax as you exhale. Let all the tension go. Again, breathe in the peace and relax. And one more time. Big deep breath. And relax. All right. So tonight's topic is, what exactly does DNA control? Have you seen the articles? And I'm sure you have. If you haven't seen this in school, you've probably seen article upon article or programs on TV, this kind of stuff. And they claim that DNA is the end all determining factor in life. So, when you hear that, the way it's presented, do you worry that you might be a victim of your biology? Does that cross your mind? Do you think that DNA controls your life? Because that's basically what they're saying. And, since you have genetic programming, then does that mean that genetics are going to determine your entire life experience, your personality, the way your life is going to unfold, what experiences you're going to have, and the date that you're going to move on to your next adventure? The question is, what exactly does DNA control? Cami says that positive thoughts can produce miracles. I absolutely agree. I'm walking proof of that. And many others are as well. So, the human body, speaking of miracles, the human body in and of itself is a miracle, or should I say miracles, because the human body is actually a very large community of organisms. By some estimate, as many as 100 trillion cells, all working together in harmony, make up the human body. Even more fascinating, each of those cells, I should say, is very much like a human body. Each cell has a skin covering all of its parts. Within a cell, there's a variety of organs that perform certain functions. Cells breathe, eat, drink, excrete waste, move about, perform various functions in the body, reproduce, live, and die. So they're quite in a lot of ways. There's very similar to the body that they make up. The human organism, although it may be 100 trillion of these cells, each one of these 100 trillion cells functions very much like a human body. And cells perceive information from their environment, just like human beings. They have receptors that function much like our ears and eyes and skin and so forth. They have an inner mass called the nucleus, and inside the nucleus is the DNA. So, does DNA determine our life? Are we basically genetic robots? To this day, many scientists and college professors still accept it to be scientific fact that DNA controls our biology. Could this be true? Are we simply genetic slaves? Well, consider this. We can remove the nucleus containing the DNA from the cell. And guess what? The cell continues functioning. A denucleated cell will continue to perform its functions for some time after the nucleus has been removed. The point being that the nucleus doesn't, or the DNA doesn't even control what's going on in the cell, much less what's going on within a human being. Now, how is all this possible? How can you remove the DNA and the cell still functions? Well, it's true that a denucleated cell will eventually die, but not because of the removal of the DNA. A denucleated cell will eventually die because of its inability to produce proteins. Proteins are the stuff that make up the cell and the human body. All matter in a cell or human body is made up of protein, and proteins over time get used up. And without the ability to create more proteins, the cell will eventually die. So, what does the DNA control? Nothing. The DNA is not a control mechanism of the cell. It's more accurate to say that it's a reproductive organ. Not quite what they say in these articles, is it? So, what exactly is DNA and how does it work? Basically, what DNA is, it's a set of plans. Think of, I was in construction years ago, and they have blueprints. Blueprints are those big pages with blue lines all over them. And that's the plans for building a building. And basically, DNA is like a set of blueprints for building proteins. DNA is a building code. That's all it is. Building codes do not build buildings. You cannot pick a building site, place a set of plans on the ground, and expect that this building's going to get built. All you would have is papers blowing in the wind. That's all. All the information is there. All the codes, all the details to construct the building are present. But the plans in and of themselves do nothing. A contractor is required. It's the same with DNA. The genetic code controls nothing. The cell manufactures proteins as needed to maintain itself and carry out its functions. The DNA is simply a template for assembling the components of those proteins. That's all. Now, all mammalian DNA is nearly identical. So, what makes a rat, a chimp, a whale, and a human? The DNA is, as it turns out, within a few percent. Very small amount of difference between all these different higher end organisms. Yet they're vastly different. You know, a whale doesn't really resemble a human. It doesn't live in the environment that humans live in, right? So, just like in buildings, there's metal and concrete and wood and glass in just about every building. But at the same time, the buildings aren't all the same. There's high rises and shopping centers and restaurants and homes. So, what then explains the various species? The difference is in how the DNA is read, just like you read a set of plans. And how the DNA is read is dependent upon what information is present. In other words, the cell will manufacture a specific protein with certain characteristics depending upon what information is perceived by the cell. Remember what I said about perceiving information of the environment. The variety of species is determined by various proteins along with the characteristics that the DNA, that the genes are expressing. Various proteins along with their characteristics are determined by the perception of the cell. Just like a contractor interprets what needs to be done, reads the blueprints, which are basically the codes, and then builds the building. So it's not that the DNA is controlling anything. The cell acts as a contractor rather than being a slave to the genetic code. It uses the code as a tool for assembling proteins. Just like a contractor picks up a hammer or a saw and starts going to work building a building. But it's the cell's perception of what needs to be done that determines what the cell does. The cell determines which proteins with which characteristics need to be assembled, and then uses the DNA as a code or a template for assembling those proteins. So you kind of go through the plans, you find the section of the plans that you want, it gives you codes for a specific thing, electrical, plumbing, whatever, and then you go to work. Not really the way, hey, Richard, how's it going? They explain this to you in school, is it? Now, what about evolution? Because we've all been taught that evolution is this random thing, that cells are in this constant process of random mutation. That's what they say. And occasionally this process ends up creating something beneficial, meaning something gives a species a particular edge. And that's not quite what really happens. What actually happens is that the cell is capable, if necessary, of creating new genetic code. So it can use the existing DNA as a template for building a protein if it realizes that that protein needs to be built. But it also has the ability to create new genetic code. When a cell perceives information calling for something that it doesn't have a code for, it creates one. That's not the way that it's been explained, is it? Genetic code then is nothing more than a set of blueprints for the construction of proteins, the building stuff of biological life. Looking at a set of building plans for a building known as blueprints, there's many pages. Some deal with the foundation, some electrical, some plumbing, and so on. The same could be said for genetic coding. The electrical section for dealing with electrical issues. Likewise, a cell can read all or part of the genetic code. And when a cell perceives specific information that it recognizes, it goes to a specific section of coding to build that specific protein. If a code does not exist, it will create one using the coding closest to the problem at hand and then modifying it. And this is far from random. Far from random. So, does DNA control biological life? No. How about our life experience? Not even close. Basically, DNA is nothing more than a building code for building proteins. All matter in a cell or a human body is made of protein. DNA is simply a set of building plans. It does not actually build anything. First, the contractor must understand what needs to be done. Second, the contractor reads the plans. And third, the contractor interprets the situation. Finally, the contractor builds accordingly. The cell, not the DNA, performs the function of the contractor. So, last but not least, is DNA controlling evolution? No. Evolution is life's answer to a changing environment. It's biological problem solving. There's nothing random about it. Evolution is intelligently directed, and evolution is intelligent adaptation. And DNA controls nothing. Now, the intelligence we'll get into in other lives, because that's a whole other subject. But I hope that helps with understanding what DNA and how it works. So let me see if there's any questions about any of that stuff, because I kind of moved through that. I know it is. It's oh, now Cammy's asking what about a cancer cell? So a cancer cell is when there's some sort of malfunction within the cell. And the easiest way I could probably explain it, there's some sort of a malfunction in the cell. And instead of the cell doing what it normally does, it does something else. And in the case of cancer, it does something that's destructive to the organism. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it? That, a cell which lives within an organism would do something to destroy the organism because it goes out along with it. And that's not survival. So it's a total malfunction. That's, for example, radiation. Radiation is very damaging to cells. It really screws them up, and to the point to where they it's almost like somebody that's suffered some traumatic head injury, and their brain, there's a lot of it that's been damaged to the point to where the information doesn't flow through it anymore, and they're not capable of functioning the way they did before. Radiation and other things, other types of toxins. There's all kinds of stuff that can mess with the health of a cell, but it's similar to that. The cell gets damaged, it doesn't function properly, and in the case of cancer, what it actually starts doing is eating the very organism that it's supposed to be sustaining. And that's kind of a hard thing to deal with. Now, I did have cancer. I survived cancer, but that's what it is. It doesn't matter what kind. I mean, you can have it in different areas of the body. That's really the only difference. Some of them are worse than others. They're more aggressive. They're harder to deal with. Especially if you don't catch it early. That's more of a problem. But that's what cancer is. It's a damaged cell that's not, and so it doesn't function properly and actually ends up being destructive rather than working in harmony with the other cells to sustain the organism. Again, Tammy's asking to change it so it can survive. Yeah, but it doesn't. It actually ends up killing itself in that sense. Cancer will destroy the organism that it lives in, and then all the cells die as a result. But we'll get it. I'm going to do a healing circle tonight that'll play with this a little bit. But what I was trying to get across is that the DNA, it doesn't control anything. The cell is the one that does the work. The cell does it based on information that it perceives. So you have a human, we have eyes and ears, and we have the sense of touch and smell and taste and all this stuff. We perceive our environment through our senses. And then in our brain, we interpret that information and try to make sense out of it, and we act accordingly. And the cell does the same. The information that it's getting is not from outside of the organism. So where is that information coming from? Mostly right here. Mostly right here. Even the information that the cell gets in the way of chemicals, a lot of the stuff that the cell, it's floating around in the body, just visualize that, and it comes across a chemical, and that's information. And so it'll act accordingly. But most of the chemicals that are floating around in the body are there because they've been released by glands, and those glands were told to do that by the brain. So you have what I would say is thought energy that can directly influence a cell. Then you have thoughts that indirectly influence a cell by the release of chemicals. You have thoughts that go down the nervous system and electrically bring information to the cells. In energy, well, this is getting into a topic. Energy carries information. I don't know if you're aware of that, but energy actually carries information. Thoughts are energy. So that's how what you think influences your health, because your cells are perceiving information from their environment, which is inside your body. And a lot of that information is from your brain, your thoughts. So if you're running around with stinking thinking, what kind of an effect do you think that's going to have on your health? Cancer and heart attacks and this kind of stuff, they're caused by some form of stress. It can be diet, lack of exercise or sleep. There's lots of things that cause stress. But negative thoughts are a form of stress. Negative thoughts, the information that's contained within the energy of those thoughts is toxic, and it reaps havoc on your entire body. So you have far more power over your health than you think you do. I did go to a surgeon for cancer. I sought assistance to cut some of it out, try to cut all of it out. But I also did a lot of meditation and Tai Chi, this kind of stuff, Qigong, my own energy healing, my own, and meditation, directing energy there and maintaining a positive attitude. And I survived, and I'm cancer free. I'm still tested all the time. They take my blood and they look, they can't find anything. It's gone. uh, on the physical on the nervous system itself. They'll tell you that your nerves, once damaged, they're not really repairable. Well, it's true. Surgeons really can't repair nerves, but that doesn't mean that they're not repairable. I had fairly significant spinal damage. I had nerves that were damaged to the point to where they weren't communicating properly. And they still don't at 100%. I'll be honest about that. And it wasn't like I just, snapped my fingers or gave a chant or something like that, and I was instantly healed. This is years in the healing process. But I had spinal surgery to stabilize my spine because it was a deteriorating condition. I've got all kinds of artificial discs and rods and screws, and you know, it, you see an MRI or an X-ray of me, it's pretty alarming. But my spine is stable now. And that's what surgeons can do. They can stabilize your structure so that the idea is that it doesn't get worse. I was headed for a wheelchair. And I was getting pain issues and paralysis, losing my ability to walk. So I had the surgery. But the nerves that were damaged, the neurosurgeons themselves were saying that that's not something we can repair. And so I let them do what they could do, and I worked on the nerves. I walk, to people that don't know, if you saw me walking around, you'd think I was normal. I'm not. I still have some issues. I have, like, sometimes at night, restless leg and pain and things that wake me up, and I've got to meditate myself back to sleep. But I walk without a cane, which is something they said would never happen. And I did that with thoughts and some exercise, physical exercise. So there's a lot of, my point being that, medicine is great, but they deal with, things that they can look at from a surgical perspective. How can we make this as normal as possible with the surgical procedure? With drugs, how can we try to force the body to get back into a state where of balance, where it can heal itself? So that's the way they look at things. Energy is not part of the equation, even though this is a energy universe and we run on energy, and everything in this universe is energy interacting with energy. What I'm telling you is that consciousness influences that energy interaction. Not only to the point, it's not like I just sit around and think, okay, well, I want my nerves to reconnect. I just think in terms of I'm whole and the energy is balanced and flowing, and I move about as if it was. And over time, I almost got completely normal with the way I walk. So what I'm saying is that higher consciousness, the energy, will do this in the healing circle, which I'll get to pretty quick here because it's starting to get late. But the point is that higher consciousness contains higher energy, and that higher energy will benefit your health. It will cause things to happen that are considered miraculous by people who only go as far as physical reality. So that, in fact, we'll get into this more later. This next book coming out talks about it some too, but it's a huge topic, and that's the gist of it, though. That's the gist of it, and that's how I overcame cancer and how I overcame physical paralysis and managed pain that was supposed to be, a lifetime of narcotics and all that, which I'm not gonna lie. I do physical work still. Sometimes I get sore and my nerves and muscles start getting aggravated. I'll take some ibuprofen and some acetaminophen, basically Advil and Tylenol. But I don't lay around on narcotics, which is what they said I needed to do. And that was going to be the rest of my life. I don't do that at all. Yes, evolution. That is biological adaptation. And so what's happening there is, let's say that there's a situation that the cells perceive, and they don't have any template to create a protein to deal with that. They'll make it up. They'll make the coding up and then produce that protein. And that's how evolution occurs. So there's nothing random about it. And it is intelligently directed. And you understand that, right? I mean, that is the definition of intelligence, is problem solving. That's the classic definition, and that's what the cell's doing, and that's what actually causes evolution to occur. Fear is stress, one of the main contributors to stress. Uh, Heart disease, cancer, a lot of things are directly related to that. Kim says it's weird to think that cells can act and react to change outcomes. Nobody even thinks about their cells. I know, huh? Tammy says resentment can make you ill. Indeed. Stinking thinking, as Kim says, there's a reaction to every action. Even things we don't realize. Yeah. Yeah, you can be unconscious of something, but that doesn't mean that it's not occurring, even within your own body, just because you're not aware of it. In fact, that's true far more often than any of us would care to admit. Thanks, Tammy. Kim says, crazy about the time we learn this stuff. Our minds have slowed down. Our lives are less chaotic because we survive unconscious life. Yeah. Yeah. Hi, Susan. Hi, Gil. Kim's asking about plasma. Is that protein to blood? Basically, everything that forms tissue or bone is made of protein. And that's what the cells assemble. And so they'll, if you're a cell and your job is, with the skeletal structure and some of the bones wearing down, then you decide that you need to make more calcium and pack it onto those bones to build some bone density. That's why, um, uh, what do they call it? Weightlifting, resistance training. That's the point of that, is that you're working against gravity. You're creating strain on the skeletal structure. And so those cells will then decide that they need to be stronger because of the strain that they're undergoing. And so they make the bone stronger. So if you do resistance training, you will have better bone density, which means that your skeletal structure will be stronger and more flexible. Same with muscles. That's what exercise is. It's the body's response. That's another way to look at it. A very something you can really see is muscle. You start working out with weights, you can see the muscles getting toned and enlarging. Those are the cells saying, hey, we need to repair these areas. What you're doing is you're creating little micro tears, and so the cells go to work rebuilding it, but they actually rebuild it a little bit stronger than it was before, and so you start putting on muscle. But everything, to answer your question, plasma, bone, blood, tissue of any kind, everything, the entire body is nothing more than different types of proteins all assembled. And the cells are what make those proteins. All right. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comment box and I'll address them in a minute. But let's go ahead and move on to the healing circle. There we go. All right. Let me get a sip of tea. So we'll work on this a little bit. Let me back up where I can get my hands down. Yeah, speaking of cancer, somebody very close to us is battling that right now. And so let's do something for him at the end here. But let's start out. We'll do a healing circle based on tonight's topic, which was DNA. So everybody gather around, form a circle, join hands, spiritually speaking, that is, for those of you that are new. Just visualize that we're sitting in a circle holding hands, hence the healing circle. Nice, comfortable, upright position. Eyes and mouths gently closed, breathing through the nose all the way down to the belly button area, like you're inflating a balloon in your tummy, and then exhale back out through the nose. So you breathe in the peace and exhale all tension. Breathe in fresh energy, fresh oxygen, and exhale all spent energy, all disease, all toxic energy. Again, breathe in peace and exhale all troublesome thoughts. Everything that no longer serves you, let it go right on out with the breath. Continue breathing on your own. As you do, follow the breath as it moves in and out of your body. Just with consciousness, just follow the breath in and out. And bring awareness to your lower energy center, expanding and contracting as you breathe. Notice if you start to get sensations that what's happening is your lower energy center is expanding and contracting, and the energy is building and moving out through your body. You may or may not be aware of that. It's okay either way. Not the point. Just know that as you breathe, you're building and flowing energy through your body, all parts of it, and that the energy actually expands beyond your body. This can be measured by scientific instruments for those of you that doubt it. So by deep breathing, you're increasing your energy, which is expanding even further beyond yourself, your energy field, strengthening it and expanding it. So follow the energy. You are immersed in a luminous substance. You may not be aware of it. You may be aware of it, but you are immersed in a luminous substance. It's higher consciousness. Not everybody is aware, and yet we are immersed in this higher consciousness. Some people call it the light of God. It's like saying the energy in which all creation, the energy that operates in the universe, the consciousness that we all experience to one degree or another. This is this luminous substance. It's energy. Breathe it in. Understand that you are it, and it is you. Allow that harmony to take place, and then peace that results is just pure consciousness, pure being. Sometimes you can experience that in meditation. It's just absolutely beautiful. On a more physical level, every thought and emotion have their own energy wave or frequency. And energy carries information. So by changing your frequency, you change your energy. So from thought to thought and emotion to motion, your frequency's changing, your energy's changing. Higher frequencies of energy are associated with higher states of consciousness. And the higher energy within higher consciousness tells your genes to express healthier characteristics. You don't have to force the issue. You don't have to sit around and think about it all the time. It just happens that way. Higher consciousness, higher energy, higher information. And that's how higher consciousness works at the cellular level of your biology to improve your health. This energy interacting with energy. This higher energy carries higher information. And when your cells come into contact with that, then they express healthier characteristics. Let's just sit with that one for about a minute. Then we'll continue. Okay. So there are the illusions of lower consciousness, and there is the reality of higher consciousness. And the healing circle is centered in the light of higher consciousness. So let's project that light out of the circle and onto the world. Healing for all. No exceptions. Those that you might think twice about are the ones that need it even more so. So healing for all. All right, now, and so it is. Before we close, I want you to visualize, his name's Paul, in the center of our healing circle. You got it? All right, now this higher energy, this higher information that influences health improvement, project that light, project it onto Paul. Just consciously focus. So we're sitting around the circle and each one of us contributing, drawing on the spiritual energy, the unlimited spiritual energy of the universe, the light, and directing it at Paul. See him starting to absorb the light. And see the cancer within him as a dark mist being dispersed by the light, the energy that we're projecting, dispersing the dark mist. See him getting more and more full of light, and this mist dissipating. The cancer being forced out of his body, his pain being released. See him getting brighter and brighter. See the 100 trillion cells that make up his body all starting to interact with this light and starting to glow. Every one of them. Until each one of those cells is nothing but light. And now he's projecting light in all directions. Bright light. And so it is. All right, slowly open your eyes. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comment box. Otherwise, we will call it a night. You're welcome. Okay, I know there's a lag time, and sometimes I don't mean to. Sometimes I miss questions because they don't come across my screen, and I don't think they're there. But normally I see all the comments, even if you're late getting them in there, or you watch it on a replay, and as you know, or on the daily posts. Awesome, Tammy. Kim reminding everybody to drink water. That's because you want to stay hydrated when you're doing energy work. The energy flows better that way. All right. So with that, let's call it a night. I honor the God within you. And remember, until the next time, the only way to bring about the greater good is to be the greater good. Good night.